everyone, and welcome to our June DMP Campfire Chat. I'm Ryan Fraser. I'm the DMP consultant here in London, Ontario, and I am here with my dear friend, Vicki Hayter, who is Director of Legacy Giving at Children's Health Foundation. Welcome, Vicki.
Thank you very much, Ryan.
For those of you who may not know Vicki, Vicki is one of our truly extraordinary PG people in Canada. She's currently the chair of the London chapter of CAGP. She was very recently awarded by our DMP family across the country as our Plan Giving Consultant of the Year. And it might interest you to know she also has training as an opera singer. So I've had a history of bringing musical guests to our DMP campfires over the years. So I'm really excited to have you here today, Vicki.
Well, thank you again, Ryan. I am so delighted to join everyone this morning.
Wonderful. Well, let's get started. Now, in our DMP campfire tradition, because we started just during COVID, we thought this should just be like sitting around a campfire having a drink. We've had a history of having some drinks here. Now, I unfortunately do not drink alcohol very much at all, no more than once or twice a year. So I thought for my fancy drink, I'm going to bring something that my 13-year-old son calls dihydrogen monoxide, which is a glass of water here. But I am thrilled to share this in my mug for the Secrets of Radar Museum, which I helped found 20 years ago. And I was just at the 20th anniversary celebration. They're handing out mugs. So how about you, Vicki? What have you brought with you today?
Well, currently, it's the good old caffeine in an extra large cup, which Ryan is very familiar with. But I'll tell you what I'm really looking forward to later is the Railway City Playa Cerveza. And I'm really hoping it warms up enough that I can enjoy this a little bit later, if not today, perhaps for the weekend. But I thought I'd share and give a little shameless plug for Railway City.
Terrific. And they're out of St. Thomas, I think, which is just south of London here.
They are, yes.
Wonderful. Well, I think those are probably the two fuels that most people on this call get through their day and their evening with working in fundraising. So one of the reasons that, Vicki, we wanted to have you on this call today, I think more than anyone I know, you are the queen of integrating your different legacy programs working together. You and I have worked together for a number of years with DMP. You've been using Wool Power very successfully, and you have a number of other things that are going on with your organization. Would you like to share with our audience what those are?
I would love to. And it's funny, Ryan, I do get asked this quite often about our secret sauce at Children's Health Foundation. So one of the things I thought I'd just share is that, 4 years ago, as Ryan said, we signed on with the DMP program, and we have never really looked back. We also signed on with the Willpower program 3 years ago and also have not looked back. Something that we use to intertwine these two programs and use as an aid is what we refer to at Children's Health Foundation, and I'll just refer to that as CHF moving forward for the rest of the presentation. We actually use what we call a Legacy Advisors Group. Now, this small but mighty group that we have consists of lawyers, accountants, estate trustees, as well as an advisor, actually a couple of advisors. So that is a technical group that I actually lean on to help with some of the questions and challenges that I have within my legacy work at CHF. So with all of these programs working together, and it hasn't been an immediate, success thing, it does take time and consistency, as we say, for any good thing to, end up to be really successful. But over time, it's really lent itself nicely to that secret sauce that we're enjoying at CHF. So, and in the end, our goal, of course, has been the education and then the successful, consistent stewardship of our donors. So through all of those programs, that's what I refer to as our secret sauce. I hope that helps.
Yeah, that's a terrific description. I think I've always been struck by how active your committee is. So I've seen with a number of different organizations, sometimes people have an advisory panel and they give advice on gift acceptance policies and maybe a few things here and there. But they're kind of around the table and they're not necessarily hands-on. I've always been super impressed, every single one of your committee has shown up to one of the talks that we've done. They're almost always going to show up at one of your legacy events, at least some representation from that committee. And I just love the fact that you have them all, with their sleeves rolled up, getting their hands dirty. I think that is one of the things that I see as an outside party as one of the keys to your success. I'm wondering if you can talk for a minute, Vicki. I know we've talked about a couple of donor situations that you've had where having multiple programs running simultaneously has led to results that if the donor had just come to one program or been touched by one program, it probably wouldn't have gone anywhere. But we've had a couple of instances over the last few years where we've had these really neat outcomes happen because somebody's been touched multiple times by the activity you're doing. I wonder if you'd mind sharing a couple of stories.
Absolutely. And I really do love to share. I've got a couple of stories I thought that might be really helpful for our attendees today, because then you can start thinking about how you might be able to, enjoy the same kind of success by using both of these programs either together or, however you wish to kind of make that work in the end. But one of the stories I really love to share is about a donor presentation that was given through the DMP program. And one of our annual donors at CHF actually had a follow up meeting with Ryan. And after he had that meeting, it was so interesting about how the wheels started turning for him, about all of the opportunities that Ryan shared. And in the end, and most recently, we just received a phone call from this annual donor. And what they'd like to do is they were wanting to make a donation to CHF by way of a very significant taxable dividend as a result of a wind up of the wind up of a company that he was actually part owner in. So you can imagine what that magnitude could mean. So reached out, we're at the point now where once he understands the tax implications, this could be a very significant gift. But again, it comes back to educating our donors about all of the various programs that we use within CHF and just making sure from our donor perspective that they know that they've got other options. The other one I wanted to just share briefly is about a lovely lady who attended a DMP presentation, and she didn't want to meet with Ryan specifically because she feared that it might be a conflict. So she did what a lot of people might not even think to do, and that was to use our willpower emails that are made available to us as part of our toolkit through willpower. And she reached out to another advisor through the offering of an advisor list from those emails. And luckily for us, this has also resulted in another quite significant gift. So as Ryan said, it's those ways of using both programs, not just feeling like you're limited to just one. How's it going to work best to use them both? So this really fared well for us so far.
Yeah, and that last donor that you were speaking of, one of the really wonderful things there is not just that she reached out, but more importantly, she reached out and it was one of our fellow CAGP advisors here in London, who you and I are really dear friends with, and who's very well qualified and we knew was giving excellent quality advice, right? Because the whole point of doing any kind of legacy educational event is that people are getting the right information. But the tricky thing, as we all know, is sometimes they'll go back and maybe their advisor or the people they're engaging with don't understand legacy giving very well. And yet here, because of willpower, she was able to get specifically into the hands of somebody who really excelled at what we needed them to do. And that has ended up with this fantastic gift for the organization. So I think that's just a great example of pairing different programs together along the way. Now, a huge part too, I think, of the success that you've had, Vicki, is you're an absolutely fearless champion of working internally in your organization. So just by way of context, CHF, I think you guys are around 20 employees roughly.
Yeah, about 2021. Yeah.
21 employees. So you're I would say a mid-sized organization. You're not filled with a huge bureaucracy, but you're also not tiny as well. And so tell us the things that you've been doing internally for the last few years to really advocate for your program and where that's led you in this time period.
Absolutely. And good question, Ryan. I have to go back to your one adjective, and that is fearless. I think that comes, for any of us in this profession about not being afraid to take risks and make sure that, you're constantly trying to test innovative ideas to really challenge the impact that we could potentially have within our organizations. So that is the biggest thing that I'd like to start off with in this area. But the other thing too is, you know, we're all about, measuring our success as we approach the end of our fiscal at CHF every year. I start to think about, measuring our successes within DMP and within willpower. And I start to gather some statistics because what we all want to be able to prove to leadership and potentially our board is, why is our legacy program so valuable? Why do we need to keep plugging for what we've been working on? We all know how we can reap the rewards from legacy, but we still need to justify sometimes to our board and our leadership, why that's so important. So start measuring. And, for willpower, that could mean something as simple as measuring, your click rates for willpower. For DMP, we've started delving a little bit deeper, Ryan and Sarah and I, into, who's expressed an interest in attending, but specifically who actually came and what does that mean to our organization in the way of how do we move forward with those donors as far as stewarding them. One of the things that's so important to note that for both of these programs, for DMP and Willpower, it's about repeated messaging multiple times and encouraging action over many years. Even if you've, ceased your contract with an organization, you still need to make sure that you are consistently staying in touch with your donors. So stewardship, right? We need to just be on that fearlessly. There's that word again. The other thing that I do is, to justify and keep plugging for our legacy program internally, is making sure I'm up on the latest and greatest as far as trends. So every year, I think for the past 13 years, I've been attending, CAGP, making sure that I am well versed in what's happening in strategic philanthropy, and and then take that plunge too to give a presentation. This past year in Vancouver, I actually co-presented with someone from out west, one of my colleagues, on ethics and legacy giving. And we titled that Just Do the Right Thing. So advocating for our programs within our organization is key. And then being able to just, again, justify your programs is everything. And for me, it's actually what keeps me staying on track from Monday to Friday.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've seen that you do remarkably well, Vicki, is the stewardship side. And I think, this whole point that sometimes we miss about how important repetition is. I'm thinking one of our earliest success stories when we started working together, we had a donor that showed up, I think at the very first talk that I ever did for you. And he came to I think 4 different talks that I had done over the span of a couple of years. He went to a bunch of your legacy things. He's been a long time committed volunteer. You just had so many touch points with him. And I mean, what was fantastic is after he came, I think to his 5th or 6th event, he reached out to you and said, yeah, I'm not just leaving 1 bequest, I'm going to do 2. And he's been super engaged and a huge champion for the organization. And it's just been amazing to watch you kind of stick handle that relationship management as the way it went through. And what was really impressive about that for me was that, we did our first event, a few months before COVID. And then the events he came to were virtual events. So, stewarding someone through virtual is really different than in person, where you're amazing at working a room and spending time with people and your warmth comes through and your personality. And that's really tough. But let's chat for a minute about the things that you realized when the pandemic hit that you had to do differently, and where you found those opportunities to steward donors when you couldn't get face-to-face, especially in event-driven things like traditionally you had done for your legacy program.
For sure. So with there being so much in the way of, that P word that we've all been referring to during COVID, and I'm going to say it because in fact, that's been key for me, is being able to pivot during COVID. And for our DMP program, specifically, it was crucial that we had an open mind, and we weren't just going to, stay status quo. Let's think about ways that we've got to keep our donors and our prospects, totally engaged. So what are we going to do? So one of the things that became clear to me during the beginning of COVID, really, for DMP, is to make sure that we are not, sending somebody to our organization that perhaps is not up on the DMP program. So keeping it streamlined, and actually my request was that we now from here on in keep me as the main person of contact. It prevents confusion with our donors and prospects. And then there again, as Ryan said, it gives you that real opportunity to really build those strong relationships, virtual or not, by phone or not. How are we going to move forward? Let's not channel them through various people in the organization. Let's let us be that main point of contact and really take advantage of being able to say, listen, I'm your person at CHF now. You call me. And I'm telling you, as far as relationship building, that just, doubled the time frame as far as what if it had been the other way around. It just really increased and really strengthened our relationships that much quicker. So I would say that that was a big one. Process.
I'll just interrupt for a second, Vicki, to jump in. The thing that I think was really neat about your idea here is, you were in a very short time period able to rethink your whole process, because traditionally, whenever you did a legacy event, whether that was DMP or something else, you would always have a person at your organization who was the main contact, who did the bookings, who did the follow-ups, who did the the reminder calls. And you kind of looked at that and went, no, wait a minute, that's now my opportunity to steward, right? And I kind of look forward into the future and go, once, and different parts of the country are in different places with live events. Some places are right back at them. Our part of the world, we still struggle with people coming out for live events post-COVID. But I think about all the implications that has for how we're going to touch donors in the future, where we used to delegate contact points. One of my big ahas of the last 3 years is watching you go, no way do I want to delegate a contact point, because that's a stewardship opportunity I would be giving up. And we see that, with so many things. We see that with your stats. We see that with how many people want to meet with you after an event. We see that with how many people show to an event, rather than just, virtual, lots of people register, lots of people drop off. Your lots of people dropping off is way lower than almost anyone else I've seen because of those personal touches. So I just want to give you a campfire chat high five through the screen here to go, I think that was such a brilliant stewardship opportunity that you've just really seized on and run with for the last 3 years.
And it also gave, it gave us at CHF an opportunity, especially through, COVID, to make our donors feel comfortable again, whether it was virtual or whether, we got to our various stages throughout COVID about being able to offer in person. And so I really gave us another opportunity, yes, to help build in that comfort zone again.
Yeah, let's jump for a second. We had a question in the chat just now, which is fair. Talking a little bit more on the willpower side, and just a question. So what are you finding with your willpower emails, and with the program that you're running there? And again, just for the audience, Vicki's got a number of different programs are running, and we've been mainly talking about kind of DMP experience so far, but let's maybe shift to willpower for a moment. And then if we've got a bit of time, I'd like to talk about some of the other things that you're doing with your donors as well. But with willpower, what are you doing? I mean, there's the process that people aware that you follow, but what are the little things that you're doing in the background on willpower to really keep that stewardship opportunity going?
Well, as many of you on the call will be aware of, if you're a charity partner or an advisor partner, there are so many things in the toolkit. And, with some of the events and activities that we have as far as CAGP London, we're making sure that we're, doing a lot of cross advertising about willpower. We're making sure that we use the willpower videos that are made available to us. We can actually co-brand our own. There have been, if anybody joined in on the willpower call the other day, there are so many new things that they've incorporated into the toolkit. So making sure that we have an opportunity to co-brand. There's the 3 template donor emails, of course, and social media posts that we can all make our own, but they provide you with the creative already. All you have to do is add your touch and your branding in, and pretty much the messaging is there. It takes a little while to get used to, but if you work with your comms team, if you're lucky enough to have a comms team, sometimes in our organizations, it's just one of us, and I so appreciate that, having been in that situation myself. But that's why the Willpower team, Lori and Nancy and her team, are there to answer any of your questions about these tools that are made available to us in the Willpower Toolkit. So keep that in mind. And you can always reach out. Ryan will talk about this near the end. You can reach out with any outstanding questions, and we'll make sure that you get hooked up with the right people to get some of these specifics for Willpower answered. But there's also something that I found really cool to help us all stay organized with Willpower. There's a really great communications schedule that's made available so that you can feel like every day and every week within your organization that you're on track with all of these tools that are being provided to us. And for me, that is critical, critical. So
So yeah, let's talk about that one for a second, because one of the things I've seen with you is that your organization has so many touch points going out constantly, right? We've had to work really closely with your comms team, and you're very fortunate to have a comms team. Let's talk for a minute about the scheduling and the coordination of messaging. Like, are you ever worried with your different programs? Because we talked about DMP, we talked about Willpower, but again, you have other things that you have done historically because you're a hospital foundation. I mean, I know you're just getting back into being able to do tours and stuff post-COVID. You've had some other events, you've had talks, you've had webinars. Do you ever worry about bombarding your donors too much with too many things at once? Or are you finding the opposite, that because you're having so many messages going, that's just helping you establish the stewardship and the relationships?
that's a really interesting one. And a lot of people ask me that. It's incredible, Ryan, and we have talked about this in the past, that you would think with DMP and, even Willpower, the repetitive messaging that is going out for people who are really thinking about, even considering leaving a gift or wanting to be involved with DMP, to even just start with the education. It's amazing. I think I can name on one hand the number of people who have said, you know what, I'm getting too many invitations. It's incredible, actually, for the number of invitations that they've received for our presentations. But I was just going to say, Ryan, but the importance about that on the other side of it is making sure within your organization that you actually have a plan in place. So if you do start to get complaints, make sure that you have some kind of plan for, I remember, Ryan, one case was somebody actually called us and they complained. And again, this is rare because I'm remembering one incident. We made sure that we got back to that person right away. We explained about the purpose of the program for DMP and that it was all about education. And, in the end, it was really that person, like in all of our professions, they wanted to be heard. They just wanted to be heard about what their concerns were. And they agreed in one of the cases to still receive the invitations. And I said, make sure that you reach back out to us if you feel that it is becoming too much. But when I explained about the purpose of DMP, that was a different story. So it's just having that ear and being open.
Yeah, and again, like I don't want to focus too much on DMP. I mean, we sponsors, but that's you've got so many other great things and so many pieces that are going out. So like, how many Willpower pieces would go out to your donors a year, as an example?
Oh gosh.
I got to think, I see, as a donor to your organization, I see at least once a month.
Oh yes,
Yeah, for
absolutely.
sure, right? Sometimes twice a month, some of the videos, things like that. So then you've got the various programs that you're doing. You've got touches, you've got your newsletter that comes out. So I'm going to go ahead and say that, like, as a donor, I would notice probably 24 contact points a year coming from CHF. But I would guess, we never notice all of them. So I'm guessing you probably have more like 36, 40 contact points in
That
terms of
makes more
some
sense to me,
details.
Ryan.
Yeah.
Yeah, for
Yeah, so
sure.
there's a lot of coordination that needs to go behind the scenes. That is a heavy load that your comms folks are having to do. Let's talk for a minute about when you're advocating for budgeting for your programs, because you're running multiple programs and there's costs involved in that. What are the sorts of things that you go back? I mean, you've got a wonderfully supportive CEO in your organization, but you still, we all have to advocate for different silos of our programs in the budgeting process. What would you suggest to people who are on the call in terms of, how do you advocate for funding for the various programs when you understand there's a synergy between everything that you're doing, but that's not always the case when you're trying to allocate budget money. It sometimes is a either or. So how have you dealt with that in the past?
Well, I'm going to go back to, like the proof is in the pudding, in that, you know, when I'm very careful about this, but I am going to use this as an example. At CHF, by using these two programs specifically together, we've had the highest legacy giving results in the last 3 years. So it's just advocating, it's the measuring, and it's the measurement of your programs, being able to take that back again to your leadership and saying, look, because of this, because of those donors, those two donors that I gave an example of earlier, those are the things that your leadership and your board are wanting to hear. It's that proof that this is working. But sometimes for folks who don't understand legacy, we all know in our work that it can take several years before we see the results. But that's why we have to start these programs now, in order to see the results down the road. So it's just about advocating, showing the results where you can. If you're not seeing the results, I realize that that's for some of you, but you have to convince your leadership that, through some of the, perhaps training that you're able to take, make sure that you talk to other colleagues and find out, if you're not able within your organization to take the training, why was it beneficial for your colleague? What did that garner for you and your organization? And then you can take that back. That's building credibility, as we all know. Take it back and say that so-and-so at such an organization actually were able to invest in this training program. And now as a result of it, they're just starting to see those results. So use your colleagues. That's another thing that I'm very big on. Use your colleagues in the training if you're able to get that behind you. And it will come. It will come because you'll be able to start to show those results.
Yeah, it's, like I always like to say, it's like the CAGP bat phone. We have such a wonderful community at CAGP. I got 2 calls yesterday, up to me saying, hey, I've got this, do you have experience? And, one case I did, and the other case I had to say, nope, but I know who does, right? And so that network, that community that we all have is so vitally important. And I know for you, Vicki, like that's been a huge part for you. You believe in that enough that you have been suckered into becoming chair of our London chapter here. And that's a big job. I've done it in the past. But what I love is this nature that we have in our community, that we're also open with one another, sharing successes, but also sharing failures, and then sharing the knowledge like you've done here today. So we're going to have to wrap up. Vicki, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. I hope everybody got a little bit of something out of here today. We had a little bit more focus on DMP just because of the nature of our talk today, and using programs. We're trying to bounce back and forth with Willpower and DMP and other programs and give you a sense of what Vicki's done. I think I can safely say, Vicki, if people are interested in learning a little bit more about what you've done, feel free to reach out to Vicki. She's super accessible, and thank you again for your time here today with us.
Be fearless, everyone. Thanks for joining us today.
Awesome. Well, our next Campfire Chat is going to be in July with my colleague Bryce Ledke, who is out in Edmonton, and Serena will be getting some details out to everyone on Bryce's guest. And I hope you've gotten a lot out of today. We really enjoy doing these. Have a wonderful summer, and thanks for spending this half an hour around the campfire, or the imaginary campfire, with us today. And cheers. We'll see you soon.